take a break. Keep the whole world guessing, take a break. From the human race, take a break. When it gets depressing, take a break.
It's my pleasure today to be introducing you to Dr. Robyn Kelly from Auckland, New Zealand. Dr. Kelly is an integrative medical practitioner that I've known for some 20 years. And best introduction, probably, I was revisiting his first book, Healing Ways. And I loved the foreword written by Dr. Stephen Ung. And he says, there are many modalities of healing for human beings. Recognition of this has recently come to be termed complementary or integrative medicine. The guiding force behind these initiatives, which will undoubtedly gain momentum throughout the 21st century and indeed the third millennium, is that healing is not merely a technical phenomena, but a holistic process of facilitating peace, happiness, and harmony. So what wonderful words he gifted you in that first paragraph. Thank you for talking to us today. You've, over the years, very successfully melded Eastern and Western practices. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, hopefully it's successfully, but it's certainly something I've followed my heart with and my interests. And you know, to use the Eastern expression, it's yin and yang. It's the balance of yin and yang, where you can see the yang side of it is the active Western medicine, the rescuer, the fix-it person, and the yin is the basically the softer being part, the being side, whereas the Western medicine is the doing side. And as you well know, Frank Sinatra said, "Doobie doobie doo." You've got to do both. He sang that. And so there's the doing and the being. And the being is a lot about bringing your presence to the person, but also for them to identify their own presence, deeper presence. And not only to see their presence, but to appreciate their presence, even love their presence as well. And through that comes peace. And I have never seen any conflict between these two. In fact, like in the yin and yang symbol, they are they're independent and co-independent or whatever. So they really go together. And for my practicing life, it's very sustainable as well, because once you've got balance in what you're trying to achieve, it reflects back into you as a person and makes you sustainable. Okay, so it's highly sustainable. Yes. So Stephen, my dear friend, and thank you for reminding me about those amazing words of wisdom, is probably one of the people I've been blessed with as a mentor. And he's done the same with a deep knowledge of the philosophy of peace and balance and harmony. And ultimately, that's what we achieve. If somebody comes to me and initially I'll ask them what they want, but we tend to agree that it would be lovely if out of this exchange, they were able to capture within their lives some peace and harmony and feeling at one with their environment and nature, because that seems to be happening. And therefore, what's happening to us at the moment, we're into this sort of retreat where we can either be in a situation where we're going to worry and panic and catastrophize, or we can use it as a time where we can start to sort of connect with deeper issues. We can, as you say, we can take a break. I said, spend a night with your own persona, spend a night with your own best friend, strike a light, watch your flame star glowing. And I believe this is an opportunity for a lot of us to take stock of what it really means to be alive and what's important in life, our love and our relationships, and our home, our sacred homes.
Speaking of homes, it's around about 20 years ago that you made a very big decision and moved from a town-based practice and moved everything back and been operating out of your own home since. And all of that operation has been quite different. And for me, because I was a patient, the thing that I valued the most was that the time frame that I could have with you allowed me to share really what was going on. And it was like a partnership that formed over time, where I had some insight on what might have been contributing causes to my inner body and how it was behaving, but I had your medical insight, but also your holistic intuition and practices too. So there was this meld of things. So how did your business come to do that?
Well, you're describing what happens when you give space and time to allow a process to occur, rather than forcing it into a box where an outcome is, we try to predict an outcome. This is different. This is where we create the space so the outcome evolves more organically. And it's the most important thing I did. Actually, it was 30 years ago now since I'd made this move.
Okay.
And I'm still in the system, and I still go back into the box medicine and for a day or two a week, because for a number of reasons, and it helps me apparently tick all the educational boxes I need. But it's very different in this practice. And although I do acupuncture, that's important, and that allows me to help that person connect and give them an understanding how to connect to the universe and the environment and feel peace. And that's the idea of all that. But if I didn't have that, it would still be important, because I'd be able to spend more time listening. And the main thing is listening with an open mind and a compassionate heart. And yes, we have to ask direct questions if somebody's if they've got a heart problem or an arrhythmia, or I need to examine them, I have to spend time so that they're not at any risk. But the other thing is that we assure them that this is confidential, and that seems to be picked up intuitively from people, because they're coming into like a home, and we're treating them as we are the hosts and you're the guests, and we're that respect, this joint respect. And I think that allows them to open up, ensuring that it's confidential. And also we're giving them time to do that. We're not dictating the narrative. We're allowing them to tell their story of their life. You know full well that therapy is massively important, because as they do that, and you may guide them a little bit what parts of their life we want to hear about, but they then intuitively join the dots in their lives, and no wonder this is, and that is incredibly healing. That message seems to compute, if you like, with the body and even the immune system. We know that because there's studies done on people writing of traumatic times. But actually, if you're also in the presence of someone else who isn't interrupting too much, although I'm prone to, I'm not a good counselor. In other words, if I want to say something, I get so excited, I say, "Oh yeah, that's happening, isn't it?" So I don't do that. But if I just listen, that is, as I put in my box, that's 90% of the work. With acupuncture, you're listening to the bodies. You're actually tuning into what the feelings of the body, the touch of the body, the sensitivity of the body. So you're listening in a different way. You're listening, and also you're replying. So the person comes to you with a pattern in their life, and you reply with a pattern, and the body will let you know whether you're right or wrong with that pattern. That's the deeper aspects of acupuncture. But you actually do acupuncture in a more meditative mode. That's the way to do it. You can't have too busy a mind. It's good to do it with a smile and a laugh, not in any way a mocking laugh. That must never happen. but sharing a lightness of heart and spirit. And that's terribly important as well. And sadly, in medicine, there isn't, I don't know if there's the time to do that so much. I think you should all do it with a light, open heart. But you don't see that in medicine. You see a lot of worried brows. People are writing notes mainly to cover themselves if something goes wrong. And that's not a light-hearted thing. You have to do that in the system, but it tends to block out the healing lightness of being that needs to be the essence of the healing,
Yes.
of the healer
And
and the healee.
I think responsibility is a part of that too. Like I know I've had treatment sessions with you in the past, and you were always, wherever the little needles were put, there was always at some time, not necessarily all the way through, but you were touching and connecting. So there was this. You were in the healing with me, you know, and there was that physical connection. And there's something for me that was incredibly reassuring, even if it was only for a couple of minutes. It's like that. The same thing I think with hands-on.
Yeah.
Which is why the current things that are happening to not be able to have human touch.
I know.
It's
well, and hugely important when we take a pulse, for instance. There's more going on than us taking a pulse. Certainly, it's probably particularly for men who in the past have not had a lot of other touching apart from shaking hands as a sort of. There's a communication that's going through touch, which is important. And as you say, there's this term now. We've got to be in the bubble. I don't know here they're using this term. The politicians. You've got to be in your bubble. Well, what happens is that energetically, you are in the same bubble. When you start harmonizing, where even now there's some sort of bubble connecting, but actually in presence, with your presence, you're in that bubble. There is an illustration in one of my books which shows that is the very important part, that the healer comes part of that bubble. Now, but the important thing for the healer is that bubble, somehow you induce in that bubble energy that comes through, because if there are two antennae, it comes through like on the TV. But as important is that you separate yourself so you're not in control of that person, and that the essence comes through them afterwards. So they mean that. Now, the problem with some types of healing is that it can be very controlling, and that they can use that bubble for you to sign up for many more treatments, or dare I say it, come to many congregations where you're going to be giving money into an organization. I'm digging a bit at probably some evangelical movements. The important thing of being in the bubble is you are there, but you also respect, so that you allow that person, you disentangle a little bit. Of course, your heart is still with them, so that they have that independence of healing. So their healing isn't dependent on you, that you're just there guiding them to becoming independent and having this come through them, which is the sign of the cross. There's like this ministry of healing, and then the receiving. Yeah. You know, and the two are kind of inseparable, but they're not necessarily like that. You know, it's complementary. And as the Buddhists would say, non-attachment. So your heart, so you don't get a codependency in the practice. This is important, because codependency and I describe in the Human Hologram how a healing process goes through. First of all, the person comes in and expects often a rescue. So you are the healer, and it's like they come as an innocent child to you. Okay, but as the healing process evolves, and that may be accepted to begin with, that person is going to grow into a healing adolescent and a healing adult, whatever age they are, and take responsibility. So actually in the healing process, there's a lot of toing and froing that happens after that. And there's also necessary questioning what you do as they then own their healing. And they may well be able to do what you do with acupuncture themselves through just their creative practices, or qigong, or yoga, or singing or dancing or whatever. That is my aim, is that just introduces them to that connection, but I don't own that connection. And this is what you do as a parent. You remain friends, but you're not in that dominant role, even though they may be wanting you to be in that dominant role to begin with. Hey, help me, rescue me. Don't just tell me to go on. You know, that's not going to work for me at the moment, and I'd agree. So you bring them to that point where their omming will be as good as my acupuncturing. Or whatever they do, you know, if it's tap dancing or I don't care, as long as it's something that's them, you know, that's really in their heart.
When I had the idea of calling the program Take a Break, I was immediately reminded of your song, and just run through the song again, and perhaps I'll play it in full at the end of the program. I'll just tap that on when I edit.
Well, I put the lyrics up because I'm just saying when I wrote this, probably 2001. Yeah, there you go. Okay. So that's nearly 19 years old.
Yeah.
And anyway, it says, and I won't, so take a break, keep the whole world guessing. Take a break from the human race, sort of what's happening at the moment. Although it's lovely, we walk down the roads and somebody comes towards us, and so then go to the other side of the road, but then we go like this, hello, how are you? Now, if we'd been just going on the same path, wouldn't have said, a lot of people wouldn't have even said hello to each other. Now you're going on the other side of the road and saying, hello. And it's because you're sharing the same experience. You actually, and you feel a kinship with this other person. Yeah. And of course, because it's so silly, you can have a good laugh, can't you? It is a bit silly, isn't it? But here we are separating, but we're actually saying, hello, how are you doing? Anyway, take a break when it gets depressing. So take a break when keep the whole world guessing. Take a break from the human race. Take a break when it gets depressing. Take a break, blah, blah, blah. Fly away on a magic carpet. In other words, what we're doing, use your imagination to fly away. Sadly, that's what they're going to be doing with these virtual reality classes soon, because they'll say, you can't go to Fiji, but we'll bring Fiji to you. We'll talk about that. It's not so good. Fly away and you're broken-hearted, fly away. And then there's the middle eight or whatever it is. Because the last thing you need at your time of life is a truckload of trouble and a bucket load of strife. Okay, so I'm encouraging people to use this lockdown as a sort of, that it's, you know, see the benefits of it. And the last thing you're needing in this day and age is a head full of worry and a belly full of rage. As you know, it's called irritable bowel. It's a belly full of rage, to be honest. So it's interesting what's going to happen to the irritable bowels. And then I say, spend a night with your own persona. Spend a night with your own best friend. Strike a light, watch your flame star glowing, which is your essence.
Yeah. And that's probably pivotal for now, I think. That really
and then I sort of,
for now.
Yeah. And at the end of it, the original version with Mike I was playing, we didn't put it in this version because it was a bit way out. We got an idea of a UFO coming down to let the person off, as in a Close Encounters of the Third Kind, you know. For some reason, I didn't push it there. I think a new version could use that, taking a break. But it's like an out of doing experience we're doing. An out of body experience, an out of doing experience. And I think that's what we're taking a break from. We're taking a break from our busyness, and which a lot of the world is addicted to busyness.
Yep.
So we're going to see a catharsis, a purifying.
Yes, I like that word. Yes.
And I think that's what we'll be experiencing the next few weeks and months. For a couple of weeks, a lot of people have thought, oh, this is great. It's like going on holiday, like an old-fashioned Sunday, you know. But then the catharsis comes. Catharsis, also catarrh, as you know. So in Chinese medicine, if if you relax on holiday, that's when you get your cold.
Yeah.
If you're a teacher, the Friday at 5 o'clock is where you get your headache. It's when you start unwinding that all this stuff comes to the surface.
Mm.
That's what I'm dealing with a lot at the moment.
Mm.
But it's actually a purging, it's a detox that's
Yes.
happening.
Yes.
And it's rough at the time, but there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm. Mm. I know from my association with you, music has been a big part of your life all the way through, and I've noticed the last 20 years, because that's when I've known you, of course. And you, your two other books, there was Human Hologram, and what was the other one?
Human Antenna.
Human Antenna.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm really, to what it's, perhaps give me your notion of how, I know the good music does to me, but how does it help us? I think you used the term before, harmonize, given all its variants. You know, different music does, I'm appreciating it does different things. Like there's great lightness in Take a Break. It's very, that opening piece is very almost circusy. There's a little bit of the...
It's very vaudeville, very vaudeville. A lot of,
yes.
You see a lot of the Beatles stuff, Sgt. Pepper. There's a mix between the psychedelic and the vaudeville.
Yes.
And the vaudeville is the sort of old-fashioned, here we go, you know, just that. A lot of that in Monty Python, a lot of vaudeville in that.
So how does all of these different expressions, like, how does it work in the body? I know that's a big question.
Yeah, I think there's so many different types of music. There's the music like rock music, and that is like Body's Valium. It actually creates harmony. As my practice, I tend to have light classical or show music or light jazz on in the background, because that creates a sense of peace. And whatever it is, it infuses the body with the harmonics. And as you know, there's with Pythagoras and others, there's a lot of a deeper understanding how that and how octaves and chord structures work. As Leonard Cohen said, I heard there was a secret chord that the angel that claimed the Lord. You know what I mean. So there are particular chords that will minor chords which will induce sadness and reflection, and others that will do that. I like to think I'm not too contrived with that, so that I don't. They just, when I'm feeling a song coming through, it automatically seems to create those structures. I think they come through when you're open to it. The songs can come through pretty well fully formed, and the joy that I have is that the words and the music seem to go together, that somehow they have the same nuance or whatever. Yeah. So what do? And so you've got different types of music. You've got jazz, for instance, where there may be free flow jazz, where you're being surprised every moment of which way these guys are going with their improvisation.
Yep.
So although you have a theme, the unexpected seems to happen. So you're really in the moment. You're totally in the moment. But at the same instance, that moment is based on something that's happened, a theme that's happened in the past, and something that's going to happen in the future. Very, very subtle. I don't think we really understand it, except that it's a universal language that brings us all together. And when you've got the different cultures bringing their stuff together, you get this fusion of world music. It's absolutely wonderful, because actually the intent is the same. The joy or the sadness of the music is the same, but actually they're bringing their different perceptions into it. So, as you know, I've been doing these bathroom ballads since 2000, and I retired to the bathroom in 2014 for a number of reasons, and it was really to cheer me up through a difficult time. And now we're seeing all the stars now rapping in the bathroom, and they're all, because they can't perform out there. I wish I'd patented it. I really would. And I have offered to give them all lessons, all right, you know, because I'm not sure all of them are doing particularly well. And I'm failing. You know what happens? You get a bit miffed if you thought of it first.
Yes.
So I'm carrying on, but I'm not getting them in. But it'd be interesting to see what happens to them, whether they, like me, they're going to carry on doing that, because I have a lot of fun doing that, or whether they're going to be comfortable, because I think we were not going to have big gatherings of concerts for a long time. They're going to get withdrawal symptoms, aren't they? And I'd recommend for those guys and girls, whatever, to do the writing. That's the time, because when an artist becomes suitably successful and a superstar, basically they can lose contact with a certain reality you need to download profound music. That's why Leonard Cohen, you know, was a meditator, and a wonderful album by Nick Cave about called Ghosteen. I really recommend this. I can't remember, that's moved me more than any music in the last few years, and it follows the death of his son. But it's such a profound experience. You can't actually listen to it in the car. I think you have to listen to it with the lights down with the headphones. When we're forced into retreat like now, this is the time we can be more creative. So this is the way I would like these artists to actually reconnect with the creativity that got them going in the first place. So the music flows through you when you're composing. It flows through you. You need then to use your head on how to get it out there in a recorded form. So it's like all art. It's good to have a bit of discipline, learning how to paint, but ultimately the inspiration comes through you when you don't get in the way.
Yes.
As Van Morrison was saying recently, it's the subconscious. What are your songs about? Well, they're not about anything. I can't remember writing any song. I can't remember writing this any more than it just doesn't, because it doesn't lodge in the memory the same. It bypasses through. And that's why people say, oh, they just comes in a dream, or it comes when you're asleep. So that's the creative process of the music. So the music's out there and you just put it down.
Yes.
So I think it's more basic in the universe than even us. You know, it's actually, and we're just, and as I say, it's incredibly healing. It's incredibly healing with the right sort of music.
Yes.
You've seen Emoto, the late Matsumoto Emoto, who actually subjected crystalline water to different music, and the beautiful patterns with some, but some gangster rap just caused a lot of chaos in there. I'm not saying there's good rap as well. I think rap is a great poetic expression for so many people. Allows that. So there's certainly, as an art form, I'm not anti that, but when it's tinged with aggression and darkness, that's not good. That's no.
I know the same for myself. I've done 2 pieces of art, well, probably more, but 2 in particular, and you know, they came about as a result of my deep connection with somebody. And I went home and I just created. It was like, it just came in, I didn't do anything else. And next 24 hours, I was just absorbed in the work, and it was done. So, and you know, what, for me, that connection's really important. And then I think if you're not having it, like in the now, then we have to create it, like I've created today with yourself. And so we have to be in intention to do that, so that we get some level of fulfillment. You were saying to me earlier, and I think I'm not sure if I've heard your last song or not, is it called The Day We Came Home?
The Day the World Came Home.
Oh, The Day the World Came Home, yes. Tell us about that one.
I'll tell you what, I'll try and get it up on my, I'll have to remind myself of the lyrics. Here you go. So I'll read this one. Yes, they'll talk of it forever. This is what I wrote my first lockdown day. Having said that, I'm working still, so it doesn't alter me much, but it's what I felt the day the world came home. Yes, they'll talk of it forever as they watch their candles glow. The day the world came together, the day the world came home. The day they closed the businesses, the day the streets were bare, and strangers kept their distances, and strangers dared to care. Then I go through the chorus again. When families stopped and listened, every woman, man, and child, when hopes were sealed with heartfelt wishes, and deals were sealed in kind. More instrumental. For those who leave us now, your names they'll carve in stone, and they'll meet at dawn to honor your souls, and the day the world came home.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was a positive spin, but I see a home as a sacred place. It's like we're retreating, and it doesn't matter what your home's like, doesn't matter how modest it is or whatever, or like Prince Charles, who retreated to his 150,000 acres. I thought, and the poor Queen, I was just in the castle. But it doesn't matter. You retreat to your sacred place, and whatever's behind all this COVID-19 and the negative stuff that's happening, and some of the things I'm a bit concerned about, that it'll be a push now for virtual realities and artificial intelligences to take over our world. I think there's something to counteract that, and I think there's when you come home to your own heart and your being, and that I talk about those who leave us now because I think there is a sacrifice of older people. Whereas in the wars that went before, it was the young people who sacrificed for the older people. The older people may say, well, look, our time has come. We go, we're more concerned about you. And that's why I put this idea that vigils will be held in the future, like we held vigils for those in the First and Second World War on Anzac Day, and we'll be lighting candles and remembering those who sacrificed for us now, sacrificed for a better life. So that was just a perspective, and that I felt was worth. Well, I don't know if it was worth saying; just came through me, so it might be wrong. I don't know where it came from, but
look, that's open for everyone to interpret. But for me, it really opens heart space. We don't use the word honour very much in our language these days. It's quite an old-fashioned word. Yet with the Virtues Project, it's used all the time, and they have they're living in this practice of being able to honour what they see happening in front of them and how people are behaving, what they're doing, what their actions are signifying, and they use that language and a virtue to make a description, and it's profound. The influence it has is profound.
When we talk about music, what happens, we're all sitting listening to music. We're all as one because we're experiencing, we think, the same feelings and the same as when we're laughing. As Victor Borg said, it's the closest connection between people. When people start laughing, as you know, that connects them. So music and laughter. But in the same way, in a broader way, we've got this connection now where everybody is experiencing something that's very similar, and that's what we're acknowledging. That's why, hopes were sealed with heartfelt wishes. It's not a commercial transaction because deals were sealed in kind. That's what I felt that we're actually, and people, the interesting thing is when I'm doing phone consultations, they're responding, interesting enough, like I am doing a house call because I'm phoning them. And they're actually overwhelmed by that. And they're all over me, even though it's much easier for me, and I don't have a waiting room there. People are saying, that's interesting, you're coming into my space here. And I found that quite interesting. It is different, but I think it's like Patch Adams says, you need to, when he does a house call, he goes in and he goes everywhere, looks in the cupboards, the toilets, doesn't he?
Yes.
And he stays around because he finds so much about them. So I think that's interesting about that. I'm really concerned that they're going to use these teleconsultations now as what they would say the gold standard in practices. So they're going to, so we've got to watch that. There's a place for it, and at the moment it's a godsend. But let's be really cautious about this in our lives, that this isn't going to be a thin end of a wedge where we're going to think of virtual connections are better than our personal connections. Yeah. And they're a substitute, but then they're not the thing. They're a poor substitute, I think.
Yeah, they're a replica. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Robin, thank you so much. Wonderful to reconnect with you today. I know that this program is going to be a springboard for a lot of creative expression. And one of the things I love at Professor Howard Gardner and his theory of multiple intelligence. And, you know, there are people who think, oh, I'm not musically talented. But if you love music, of course you are. It doesn't mean if you don't play something that you can't be that. You can develop a full appreciation for actually all of the arts. And all of the arts actually are, in this time, going to be a source of great joy for us when we can't engage as much as we would like to.
Look, you're a musician if you listen, because the music wouldn't exist without you hearing it, listening it.
Yes.
It's like the tree that falls in the forest, Does it make a sound? So actually, it won't exist without you listening. Yes. So there you go. And so you are a musician because you've got ears. And if you even haven't got ears, you've got rhythm,
Yes,
so,
yes.
Yeah.
I had an experience with a young child in Russia who was both deaf and dumb. And we had this encounter, no words, or actually, well, we did kind of, but she held my ear and she hummed and I hummed. And it was the most, even now, all these years later, it sits there as one of the most joyful moments of my life. The pure connection with that little poppet, no words as we know them, and yet we were just united in this incredible, I've never been more present. I think that was it. Just total presence.
Yeah.
And I haven't had an experience yet to match it. But it was a great informer. Yeah.
Lovely.
Thank you. Thank you. We will talk again soon. Blessings to you and yours.
Okay, and to you, Pat, and good luck with this new venture, which is great. Taking a break. All right. That's good.
Talk soon.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Take a break. Keep the whole world guessing. Take a break from the human race. Take a break when it gets depressing. Take a break